Have you ever been in a conversation where someone is talking and talking, and you are trying so hard to understand every single word, but they are speaking so fast, and your brain just gets tired? You start nodding your head and smiling, but deep down, you have completely lost the main point of what they are saying. It is a terrible feeling, right? You feel like you are failing, like your English is not good enough, and you just want to give up. But what if I told you that the problem is not your English? The problem is that you are trying to catch every single word, when native speakers do not even do that. Today, I am going to show you a secret that will completely change the way you listen to English. You are going to learn how to stop worrying about the small words and start catching the main points quickly, just like a native speaker does. Welcome to English in Fluency. My name is Alex, and I am so happy you are here to practice with me today. Let me tell you a little story about my friend Sarah. Sarah was working at a big company, and she was in a meeting with her boss, David. David loved to talk. He would start telling a story about something that happened 10 years ago, then he would go off on a completely different topic, and then he would talk about the weather. Sarah was writing down every single word he said, trying to translate it all in her head. After 20 minutes, David looked at her and asked if she understood the new plan. Sarah froze. She had 5 pages of notes, but she had no idea what the actual plan was. She felt so embarrassed. The reason Sarah failed in that moment was not because her English was bad. It was because she did not know how to listen for the summary. She did not know that native speakers use special little phrases to tell you, "Hey, forget all that other stuff I just said. Here is the important part." Once Sarah learned these phrases, her work life became so much easier. And that is exactly what we are going to do for you right now. When you are at a B1 level in English, your brain is doing a lot of heavy lifting. You are translating words, you are thinking about grammar rules, and you are trying to keep up with the speed of the speaker. It is exhausting. But native speakers do not speak in perfect, organized paragraphs. They speak in a messy way. They change their minds, they add extra details, and they go off topic. If you try to understand every detail, you will always feel lost. You need to train your brain to relax during the messy parts and wake up when the speaker starts to summarize. Summarizing language is like a big bright sign that says, "Listen to this. This is the main point." When you hear these special phrases, you can let go of all the confusing details you just heard and just focus on the simple truth that comes next. It is like having a map in a dark forest. You do not need to see every tree, you just need to follow the path. The first phrase I want you to listen for today is one you have probably heard before, but you might not realize how powerful it is. The phrase is, "to make a long story short." People use this when they know they have been talking too much, or when they have been giving too many details and they want to finally give you the main point. Imagine you are at a cafe and your friend Mark is telling you about his weekend. He says he woke up early, then he went to the store, then he could not find his keys, then he had to call his brother, then his brother was busy, then he finally found the keys in the fridge. It is a long, boring story. But then Mark says, "Anyway, to make a long story short, I missed my train." Boom! There it is. You do not need to remember the keys or the brother or the fridge. The main point is that he missed his train. When you hear "to make a long story short," your brain should immediately get ready for a short, simple sentence. You can even take a deep breath and relax your shoulders, because the hard part of listening is over for that moment. Let's practice that feeling right now. I am going to tell you a messy story, and I want you to wait for the phrase, and then just focus on the end. I was walking down the street yesterday, and I saw a dog, and the dog was really cute, so I stopped to pet it. But then the dog started running, and I ran after it, and we went through a park, and through a parking lot, and the owner was yelling. But to make a long story short, I lost my phone. Did you hear it? If you were trying to understand every part of the running and the parking lot, you might get tired. But if you just relaxed and waited for the magic phrase, you caught the main point easily. I lost my phone. That is the power of summarizing language. It saves your brain energy. Another really common phrase you will hear all the time is "the bottom line is." This comes from business, but people use it everywhere now. The bottom line originally meant the final number on a business paper that shows if the company made money or lost money. It is the most important number. So when people say the bottom line is, they mean here is the most important fact. Forget everything else. Imagine my friend Emily is trying to decide whether to buy a new car. She talks to her friend Lisa about it. Emily says the car is blue, and it has nice seats, and the radio is loud, and the windows are dark, but it uses a lot of gas, and the tires look old. Lisa listens to all of this, and then she says, "Well, the bottom line is, you cannot afford it." Lisa ignored the blue paint and the loud radio. She went straight to the main point, which is money. When you are listening to someone and they say, "the bottom line is," you do not need to remember any of the details they said before. Just get ready for the truth. You will also hear people say, "basically" very often. Basically means in a simple way, or ignoring all the complicated details. It is a beautiful word for English learners because it tells you that the speaker is about to make things simple for you. Sometimes people use it at the beginning of a sentence, and sometimes they use it in the middle. Let me give you an example. My cousin Tom is really into computers, and he loves explaining how they work. He will say, "the processor handles the instructions, and the memory stores the temporary data, and the hard drive saves the files. But basically, it is just a very fast calculator." When Tom says basically, he is being kind to you. He knows the first part was hard, so he is giving you an easy picture. When you hear basically, you can smile, because you know a simple explanation is coming right up. We also have the phrase "in a nutshell." A nutshell is the hard shell of a small nut. Imagine trying to fit a huge, long story into a tiny little shell. That is what this phrase means. It means giving you a very short version of a long story. I remember talking to my neighbor James about a movie I watched. The movie was 3 hours long, and it had spies, and car chases, and a secret island, and a love story. James asked me what the movie was about, and I said, "Well, in a nutshell, the good guy saves the world and gets the girl." That is the whole movie in just a few words. When you hear "in a nutshell," expect a very short, direct answer. It will not have complicated grammar. It will usually be a simple subject, a verb, and an object. It is like a gift for your ears. Now let's talk about a phrase that is very popular right now, especially with younger people, but everyone understands it. The phrase is "at the end of the day." This does not mean when the sun goes down. It means when you think about everything that has happened, and you take away all the small details, what is the final result? It is very similar to the bottom line is, but it feels a little more emotional. Let's say my sister Chloe is worrying about a job interview. She says she wore the wrong shoes, and she spilled coffee on her shirt, and she forgot the manager's name. She is so stressed. I tell her, Chloe, at the end of the day, they liked your answers, and that is what matters. I am telling her to forget the shoes and the coffee. The final truth is that she did a good job. When you hear at the end of the day, prepare yourself for a wise, simple conclusion. I want you to think about how you can use these phrases when you speak too. Listening and speaking are connected. If you train your brain to listen for these phrases, your brain will also start to remember them when you want to talk. If someone asks you about your day, and you did 100 different things, you do not have to list them all. You can just say, basically, I just cleaned my house. Or, if you are explaining a problem to a coworker, you can give the details and then say, so, to make a long story short, we need more time. When you use these phrases, you sound more natural, more confident, and you help the other person understand you easily. It is a win for everyone. Let's do a bigger practice exercise now. I am going to tell you a longer story about a character named Ryan. Ryan had a terrible day, and he is telling his friend Olivia all about it. I want you to close your eyes, or just look away from the screen, and just listen. Do not try to remember every word. Relax your brain. Just wait for the summarizing phrases and see how much of the story you understand without knowing all the details. Here we go. Ryan woke up late because his alarm clock broke. Then he ran to the bus stop, but the bus had already left. He had to walk in the rain for 20 minutes. When he got to work, his computer was broken, so he had to call the technology department. But they were busy with another problem. He waited for an hour. Then his boss yelled at him for being late. At the end of the day, Ryan just wanted to go to sleep. Did you catch it? You did not need to know about the bus stop or the rain or the technology department. You just needed to hear at the end of the day, and then you knew Ryan was tired and wanted to sleep. Let's try another one with Ryan to really cement this feeling in your mind. The next day, Ryan tried to cook dinner for Olivia. He went to the store to buy chicken, but they were out of chicken, so he bought fish instead. Then he realized he did not have oil, so he used butter. Then the butter started to burn, and the smoke alarm went off, and the neighbors came over to see if there was a fire. Ryan was so embarrassed. He had to open all the windows, and the apartment was freezing. But in a nutshell, the dinner was ruined. You see how easy that is? The story about the butter and the smoke alarm is just entertainment. The main point is, in a nutshell, the dinner was ruined. Your brain feels so much lighter when you listen this way. Now I want to talk about why this is so important for passing your B1 exams. In exams like the B1 preliminary, you have to listen to conversations and answer questions. The speakers will often talk about a lot of different options before they make a final decision. For example, they might talk about going to the cinema, then the park, then the museum, and then they will say, well, the bottom line is, we do not have enough money for the museum, so let's just go to the park. If you spent all your energy trying to remember the prices of the museum tickets, you might miss the final decision. But if you are listening for the bottom line is, you catch the answer perfectly. Examiners want to see that you can understand the main points, not just isolated words. They want to see that you can follow a real, messy conversation. Sometimes, the summarizing phrase is very short, and you have to listen closely. People might just say, "so," or "anyway," with a special tone of voice. The tone of voice is actually a big clue. When someone is finishing a long story and they are ready to give you the main point, their voice usually drops a little, or they slow down, or they take a breath before they speak. Pay attention to the music of the English language. It tells you as much as the words do. If someone is speaking fast and high, they are probably giving you details. If their voice drops and they say, "So, basically, what happened is," you know the important part is coming. This is a skill that takes a little time to develop, but just knowing about it puts you ahead of so many learners. Let's think about another wonderful phrase. What it comes down to is, this is a great phrase. It means when you look at all the facts and remove the unimportant things, this is the real issue. Imagine two friends, Nathan and Sophie, are arguing about where to go for a holiday. Nathan wants to go to the mountains because it is cheap and quiet. Sophie wants to go to the beach because it is fun and warm. They argue about the price of hotels, the cost of food, the driving time, the weather forecast. It goes on and on. Finally, Nathan stops and says, "Look, what it comes down to is, I only have $200. Nathan is cutting through all the noise. He is telling Sophie the real reason for his choice. When you hear what it comes down to, is you are hearing the raw truth. I want to share a secret with you about how native speakers feel when they are talking to English learners. Sometimes native speakers feel nervous too. They worry that they are speaking too fast or using too many strange words. When they see your face looking confused, they will often use one of these summarizing phrases to help you out. They will say, basically, or to make a long story short. They are trying to simplify their English for you. If you know these phrases, you can smile and nod at the right time, and they will feel relieved. You become an active, confident listener, even if you did not understand every single word they said at the beginning of the conversation. Let's do some more listening practice to keep building your confidence. This time, I will tell you a story about a woman named Isabella who is planning a wedding. I want you to relax, take a deep breath, and just listen for the summary. Isabella looked at 50 different dresses. She tried on white ones, blue ones, and pink ones. She went to 3 different shops in the city, and then she drove 2 hours to a small town to look at more dresses. Her mother liked the pink one, but her sister liked the white one. Isabella was so confused and tired of looking at fabric. She sat down, drank some water, and realized that the bottom line is, she just wants to be comfortable. It is so simple, right? You did not need to know about the pink dress or the 2-hour drive. The main point was that Isabella wants to be comfortable. You got it. Just like that. Think about how much more enjoyable watching English movies or television shows will be when you listen this way. In a movie, characters often argue or discuss plans for a long time. Sometimes the background music is loud, and the actors mumble. It is a nightmare for language learners. But if you just wait for the summarizing phrases, you can still understand the plot. The detective might say, "We looked at the camera footage. We talked to the neighbors. We checked the car for fingerprints. But at the end of the day, the butler did it. You did not need to understand the technical police words. You just needed to wait for the end of the day, and boom, you know who committed the crime. This is also incredibly useful for listening to podcasts or the news. News reporters love to give a lot of background information. They will tell you the history of a country, the names of all the politicians, and the dates of past events. It can be very boring and difficult, but usually, at the end of the news segment, the reporter will say something like, "Basically, the two countries have agreed to stop fighting." That is all you need to know to understand the world. You can filter out all the noise. You are training your brain to be a smart filter, not a dictionary. A dictionary tries to catch every word. A smart filter only catches what matters. I want you to try saying these phrases out loud right now. I know this is a listening practice, but your mouth needs to feel how these words sound. Repeat after me in your mind, or whisper it if you can. To make a long story short, feel how your tongue moves. The bottom line is, say it with a little confidence, like you are sharing a big secret. Basically, say it slowly, like you are explaining something to a child. In a nutshell, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, when your mouth knows how to say these words, your ears will recognize them much faster when you hear them in a conversation. It is a wonderful trick that language teachers use. Now let's talk about a slightly different way people summarize. Sometimes they do not use a special phrase. Sometimes they just use a word that means summary. The most common word for this is overall. Overall means considering everything, or in general. If you listen to a review of a restaurant, the person might say the food was okay, the service was a bit slow, and the chairs were uncomfortable, but overall, it was a nice evening. When you hear overall, it acts just like the other phrases. It tells you that the details are finished, and the final judgment is coming. Another word you might hear is essentially. It means almost the same as basically. The plan was complicated, but essentially, we just need to work together. Keep your ears open for overall and essentially. They are great friends. Let's imagine a new situation. A man named Kevin is talking to his boss, Mrs. Hamilton, about a project. Kevin says, "We had some problems with the materials, and then the delivery truck was late, and two of our workers got sick, so we had to change the schedule, and the budget went up a little bit, but, essentially, the project is finished." Mrs. Hamilton does not need to know about the truck or the sick workers right now. She just needs to know that the project is finished. Kevin used essentially to give her peace of mind. If you were Mrs. Hamilton, listening with your new superpower, you would just hear essentially and feel happy. Let's move even deeper now and look at more phrases that signal a summary is coming. I want to start with a phrase that is incredibly common in schools and workplaces, but you will hear it everywhere. The phrase is, "the main takeaway is." A takeaway is originally a word for food that you buy in a restaurant and take home to eat. But in English conversation, a takeaway is the most important piece of information you get from an experience. It is the lesson you learned. Imagine a man named Greg goes to a very long, boring meeting at his office. His manager, Helen, talked for 2 hours about sales numbers, customer complaints, and new products. When Greg comes back to his desk, his coworker asks him what the meeting was about. Greg does not want to repeat 2 hours of information. He just says, "Well, the main takeaway is that we need to sell more." Greg took a huge, messy meeting and turned it into one simple sentence. When you hear the main takeaway is, your ears should perk up because you are about to hear the most valuable piece of information from the whole conversation. Let's do a quick listening exercise with that phrase. Close your eyes and just listen to my voice. Imagine a woman named Fiona is talking to her book club about a 300-page novel she read over the weekend. She talks about the characters, the setting, the plot twists, the sad ending, and the beautiful writing style. She goes on and on for 5 minutes. Then she stops, looks at her friends, and says, "But the main takeaway is that love is more important than money." Did you catch it? You did not need to know the names of the characters or what the sad ending was. You just needed to wait for the main takeaway is, and you instantly understood the deep meaning of the whole book. That is how powerful your listening can become when you stop stressing about the details. Another wonderful phrase you will hear all the time is all in all. This phrase is used to give a general summary or a final opinion after thinking about all the good and bad parts of a situation. It is very balanced. People usually use it at the very end of a story. Think about a guy named Ben who went on a vacation to the beach. He tells his friend Chloe all about it. He says the hotel was nice, but the room was small. The food was delicious, but very expensive. The weather was sunny for 2 days, but it rained for 3 days. It sounds like a mixed experience, right? But then Ben smiles and says, all in all, it was a great trip. He is weighing the good and the bad in his head, and the final result is positive. When you hear all in all, get ready for a final judgment. It will usually be something simple, like it was good, it was bad, or it was okay. It is a very safe phrase for listeners because the answer is always a simple feeling. Now, I want to talk about something that happens a lot in real life that textbooks do not teach you. Sometimes people summarize because they feel nervous or shy. Have you ever tried to explain something in English, and you started talking in circles, and you could see the other person getting confused? It is a horrible feeling. Your heart beats fast, your face gets hot, and you just want to run away. Native speakers feel this exact same panic when they have to deliver bad news or talk about their feelings. And when they panic, they use a very special phrase to try and fix the situation. The phrase is, "What I am trying to say is." This is a beautiful phrase because it is an admission of failure. The speaker is admitting that their previous words were confusing, and they are asking you to give them one more chance to be clear. Picture a young man named Marcus. He is sitting in a loud coffee shop with his friend Jay. Marcus wants to tell Jay that he has feelings for a girl, but he is embarrassed. So instead of just saying it, Marcus talks about how he and the girl study together, and how they text each other, and how they like the same music. Jay looks confused and asks why Marcus is telling him all this. Marcus gets red in the face, takes a deep breath, and says, "Look, what I am trying to say is that I really like her." When you hear what I am trying to say is, you should feel a sense of relief. The confusing part is over. The speaker is finally going to give you the honest, simple truth. It is a very emotional phrase, and it connects people together. Let's practice that emotional side of listening. Imagine a woman named Sarah is talking to her landlord, Mr. Peterson. Sarah lost her job, and she cannot pay her rent this month. She is very nervous. She starts by explaining how the company fired 10 people, and how the economy is bad, and how she is sending out resumes every day. Mr. Peterson just looks at her, waiting. Sarah sees that she is making it too complicated, so she stops and says, "Sir, what I am trying to say is that I need 1 more week to pay you. You see how brave that is?" Sarah stripped away all the excuses and the details, and she gave Mr. Peterson the bare, honest truth. If you are listening to someone and they use this phrase, you know they are trusting you with the real facts. It is a moment of human connection, and understanding it makes you a brilliant listener. We should also talk about a phrase that sounds a little bit more formal, but you will definitely hear it in B1 listening exams or in work meetings. The phrase is put simply. You might also hear people say, put bluntly, but put simply is much more common. It means to take a complicated idea and remove all the difficult words. It is exactly what a good teacher does. Think about a mechanic named Dave. Dave is trying to explain to his customer, Olivia, why her car engine broke. Dave could say, the gasket failed and the coolant mixed with the oil. But Olivia does not know what a gasket or coolant is. Dave sees her confused face and says, put simply, your engine got too hot. Dave saved Olivia from feeling stupid. He made the English easy for her. When you hear put simply, it is like a warning bell that says, okay, the big words are gone. Here comes an easy explanation. I want you to notice how often people use these phrases with a small pause right before them. They might say, I went to the store, and I looked at the shoes, and I tried on the red ones, and then I looked at my bank account. Pause. Put simply, I am broke. That pause is a gift to you as a listener. It gives your brain a split second to wake up and get ready. In your native language, you probably do not even notice these pauses. But in English, you can train yourself to use them. When a speaker stops talking for just a second, and their face changes like they are thinking, get ready. They are probably about to summarize. This is the musical side of English that I mentioned earlier. The words are only half the story. The pauses and the tone of voice tell you exactly what is happening. Let's do a longer listening practice now that combines these new phrases with the ones we talked about earlier. I will tell you a story about a character named Ethan. Ethan just finished his first week at a new job, and he is telling his dad, Arthur, all about it over the phone. Remember your training. Do not try to memorize every detail. Just relax, listen to the music of my voice, and wait for the summarizing phrases. Here we go. Ethan told his dad that on Monday, the computer system crashed, and he had to wait 3 hours for the technology team to fix it. On Tuesday, his boss gave him a huge project with a very short deadline, and he had to skip lunch to finish it. On Wednesday, he accidentally sent an email to the wrong person and felt very embarrassed. On Thursday, he had to sit in a boring meeting about office safety. He complained about the loud noises in the office and how the coffee machine was always broken. Arthur listened patiently to all of this complaining. Then Ethan took a deep breath and said, "What I am trying to say is that I am really exhausted." Arthur laughed and said, "Ethan, the main takeaway from your first week is that working is hard." Ethan laughed too. He said, "Yeah, but all in all, I think I like the job." Arthur asked him why. Ethan thought about the broken coffee machine and the wrong email. But then he said, "Put simply, the people are really nice. And at the end of the day, that is what matters." How did that feel? I hope it felt easy. You followed Ethan through a whole week of disasters, But you did not have to carry the weight of all those problems. You just floated on top of the conversation, catching the summaries. Ethan was exhausted. The takeaway was that working is hard. All in all, he liked it. Put simply, the people are nice. At the end of the day, that is what matters. You understood the entire emotional journey of Ethan and his dad just by waiting for the signs? You are doing incredibly well. This is exactly how fluent listening works. It is not about catching every single word. It is about catching the rhythm and the main points. I want to talk about why this skill is so important for your speaking confidence too. When you know how to listen for summaries, you become much better at giving summaries. And giving summaries is a fantastic way to show off your English skills. If someone asks you how your weekend was, you do not have to say, "I woke up, I ate breakfast, I went to the park, I ate lunch, I watched a movie, I went to sleep." That sounds like a robot. Instead, you can say, "I did a lot of different things, but the main takeaway is that I just relaxed." Or you can say, "I cleaned the house, I cooked dinner, and I walked the dog. But all in all, it was a quiet weekend." When you speak like this, you sound sophisticated. You sound like someone who has mastered the language, even if you are only at a B1 level. It makes you sound confident and natural. Let's think about another very common situation where summarizing language saves the day. Have you ever been in a noisy place, like a busy restaurant or a party, and someone is trying to tell you a story? It is so hard to hear. The music is loud, people are laughing, glasses are clinking. You keep asking the person to repeat themselves, and after a while, it gets awkward. But if you know how to listen for summarizing language, you can survive the noise. You can let the loud music wash over the details of the story, and just wait for the speaker's voice to change when they say, "Anyway," to make a long story short. You only need to hear those few clear words at the end to understand what they are talking about. It takes the pressure off both of you. Imagine a woman named Grace is at a loud party. Her friend Thomas is telling her a crazy story about getting lost in the city. Grace cannot hear the directions Thomas is giving. She cannot hear the names of the streets. She just nods and smiles and waits. Then Thomas raises his voice a little and says, "But basically, I had to take a taxi home." Grace laughs and says, "Oh no, that is expensive." She understood the whole point of the story without hearing 90% of the words. She used the noise filter in her brain. This is a strategy that will make your real-life English experiences so much less stressful. You do not need perfect silence to understand English. You just need to listen for the anchors. There is one more phrase I want to share with you before we move to the final phase of our lesson. It is a phrase that is slightly longer, but very clear. The phrase is, "when all is said and done." It sounds a little poetic, like something from a movie, but people use it in normal life all the time. It means exactly the same thing as at the end of the day. It means when you consider everything that has happened and the situation is completely finished. What is the final truth? Imagine two brothers, Leo and Max, are trying to fix a broken bicycle. They spend 3 hours watching internet videos. They buy new tools. They get grease all over their hands. And they argue about how the gears work. Finally, they put the bike back together, but the chain falls off immediately. Leo throws his hands in the air and says, "Well, when all is said and done, we need to take it to a bike shop." He is admitting defeat. He is summarizing their 3 hours of hard work into one simple fact. They failed. When all is said and done, you are hearing the final conclusion of a long process. Let's put all of these phrases together into a bigger practice. I want you to imagine a character named Sophie. Sophie is a student who just finished a very difficult group project at school. She is talking to her friend Laura about it. I want you to completely relax your brain. Let the details wash over you. Just grab onto the summarizing phrases and see the main points clearly. Sophie starts by saying the teacher put her in a group with 3 other students. One student, Jack, never came to the meetings. Another student, Emma, talked too much but did not do any work. The third student, Luke, was very quiet but did a lot of research. Sophie explains how she had to write half the presentation herself, and how she stayed up until 2 in the morning fixing Emma's spelling mistakes. She talks about how nervous she was to present in front of the class, and how her hands were shaking. Then Sophie stops, takes a sip of water, and says, "What I am trying to say is that it was a very stressful week." Laura nods and asks if the teacher gave them a good grade. Sophie says the teacher liked the research, but hated the design. Laura asks Sophie to explain the grade. Sophie says, "Well, the main takeaway is that we got a B-." Laura asks if Sophie is happy with that. Sophie thinks about the late nights and the stress, and she says, put simply, "I am just glad it is over." Laura laughs and says she is proud of Sophie for doing so much work. Sophie smiles and says, "Yeah, when all is said and done, I guess I learned a lot about teamwork." Laura asks if she would work with the same group again. Sophie shakes her head and says, "No way. All in all, it was a terrible experience. But at the end of the day, I survived." Look at how much information you just understood without trying to translate every single word. You knew it was a stressful week. You knew the grade was a B-. You knew she was glad it was over. You knew she learned about teamwork. You knew it was a terrible experience. And you knew she survived. You understood the complete story, the stress, the relief, and the final opinion, just by waiting for the signs. You did not need to know the spelling mistakes or the shaking hands. You let Sophie do the hard work of talking, and you just collected the prizes at the end of her sentences. That is what it means to be a fluent listener. Now, let's talk about the real world. In the real world, things are not as clean as a practice audio. In the real world, you are going to get lost. You are going to be talking to someone. A car will drive by with a loud siren. A baby will cry. Or your own brain will just wander for a moment. When you look back at the speaker, you realize they are finished talking, and you have absolutely no idea what they said. You did not hear the summarizing phrase. You missed it. This happens to everyone. It happens to native speakers in their own language. But for an English learner, it can cause a sudden feeling of panic. Your heart beats fast. You want to run away. You think, "Oh no, they know I did not understand. They think my English is terrible." I want to tell you right now to stop thinking that way. When you miss the main point, you need a recovery strategy. You need a safety net. And the good news is that native speakers have given us the perfect safety net phrases. If you get lost, you do not have to say, "I do not understand. Please repeat everything." That puts too much pressure on the speaker. Instead, you can use very polite, friendly phrases to ask for just the summary. You can say, "Sorry, I lost you for a second. What was the main point again?" Or you can say, I am so sorry. My mind drifted. Could you just sum that up for me? Or even simpler, you can say, so, basically, what are you saying? When you use these phrases, you sound confident. You sound like someone who is actively engaged in the conversation, not like someone who is failing. The speaker will not be annoyed. They will happily repeat their summary because people love it when you care enough to ask for the main point. Let me give you an example of this in action. Imagine a woman named Rachel is at a doctor's office. The doctor, Dr. Evans, is explaining a lot of medical words. He talks about blood pressure, heart rate, vitamins, and exercise routines. Rachel is feeling a little sick, and her brain is tired. She looks at the doctor and realizes she has no idea what she is supposed to do. Instead of panicking, Rachel takes a deep breath and says, "Doctor, I am sorry." But what it boils down to is, what do I need to do at home? Dr. Evans smiles and says, "Oh, basically, just eat more vegetables and sleep 8 hours." Rachel used the summarizing language to ask for help. It was brilliant. She sounded smart. She got the information she needed to be healthy. And she survived the conversation. You can do the exact same thing in a meeting, at a store, or at a party. Do not be afraid to ask people to summarize for you. It is a natural part of human conversation. I also want to share a secret about body language. When you are listening to someone, and you are waiting for the summarizing phrase, your body language can help you. If you look confused the whole time, the speaker will feel stressed. They will think they are doing a bad job explaining things. But if you keep a relaxed face, nod your head gently while they are giving the details, and then lean forward slightly when you hear the summarizing phrase, the speaker will feel great. They will think you are a wonderful listener. And when you lean forward and they say, basically, and you smile, you create a moment of perfect communication. You do not need perfect English to have perfect communication. You just need to understand the rhythm of the conversation. Let's do another listening exercise, and this time, I want you to think about how you would react with your body. Imagine a young man named Jack is talking to his sister, Emily, about his new job. Jack complains about his boss, his long commute, the uncomfortable chair, and the boring lunches. Emily listens and nods. Then Jack says, "But when all is said and done, I am just happy to have a job." Imagine yourself nodding while Jack complains, and then leaning forward and smiling when he says, "When all is said and done." You understood him perfectly. You connected with him. You did not need to write down his commute time or the color of his chair. You just needed to catch his final feeling of happiness. That is the beauty of this method. It saves your brain energy so you can use that energy to connect with the person emotionally. Let's learn 2 final phrases to complete your toolkit. I want to start with a phrase that is a little more formal but very organized. The phrase is to sum up. To sum up means to give a total or to state the main points of something. It is a little bit formal, but people use it all the time when they are finishing a speech or a long explanation. Imagine a manager named Oliver is talking to his team, including a woman named Mia, about a new project. Oliver talks about the budget for 10 minutes. Then he talks about the timeline for 10 minutes. And then he talks about the marketing plan. The team looks tired. Oliver sees their tired faces and says, "Okay, to sum up, we need to finish the work by Friday and spend less than $5,000. When you hear to sum up, it is a very clear signal. It means the speaker is wrapping up the whole show. Everything after those 3 words is pure gold. You do not need to worry about the budget details or the marketing timeline anymore. You just need to write down Friday and $5,000. It is a beautiful, organized way to end a messy conversation. Now I want to teach you a phrase that is a little more colorful and very native. The phrase is, what it boils down to is, have you ever boiled a pot of soup for hours? You start with a lot of water, a lot of vegetables, a lot of meat, and a lot of spices. But as the water boils away, what is left? Just the thick, strong, important part of the soup, the flavor. When someone says what it boils down to is they are taking a big, watery conversation and boiling it down to the strong, important flavor. It means when you remove all the extra stuff, this is the real truth. Picture a couple, Liam and Nina, trying to buy a house. They look at a dozen houses. They talk about the paint colors, the size of the garden, the shape of the kitchen, and the neighbors. They argue and argue. Finally, Nina stops and says, "Look, what it boils down to is we just do not have enough money for this neighborhood." She took all the arguments about paint and gardens and boiled them down to the one real problem, which is money. When you hear this phrase, get ready for a very honest, very direct statement. It is usually the thing people are afraid to say, so they wait until the end to say it. Let's practice feeling the difference between these phrases. I am going to say a sentence, and I want you to think about how the speaker is feeling. If I say, to sum up, we need more time, the speaker feels organized and professional. If I say, what it boils down to is we need more time, the speaker feels a little frustrated or stressed, and they are revealing a hard truth. The words do the same job, but the emotion is completely different. This is why listening to English is like listening to music. You are not just hearing notes, you are hearing feelings. When you relax and stop translating every word, your brain has the energy to hear those feelings. You start to understand the people behind the words, not just the words themselves. That is when English stops being a school subject and starts being a real human connection. Let's do a nice, long listening practice with these new phrases. Remember your training. Take a breath, drop your shoulders, and just let the details flow past you like a river. Imagine a man named Daniel is trying to explain a complicated movie to his wife, Chloe. Daniel says the movie started in the future. Then it went back to the past. Then there was a time machine. Then the main character met his own grandfather. Then there was a big explosion. And then the screen went black. Chloe looks very confused. Daniel realizes he made the story sound impossible to understand. He stops, laughs at himself, and says, "Okay, to sum up, the good guy saves the world and goes back to his normal life." Chloe nods and smiles. Then Daniel starts talking about how much the movie tickets cost, the price of the popcorn, the parking fee at the cinema, and the gas he used to drive there. Chloe asks if the night was expensive. Daniel thinks about all the numbers and says, "Well, what it boils down to is we spent about $60 just to sit in a dark room." Did you feel how easy that was? You understood the plot of a confusing movie and the cost of the evening just by waiting for the signs. We have learned so many phrases today. Let's do a rapid-fire reminder in your mind. To make a long story short, the bottom line is, basically, in a nutshell, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, the main takeaway is, all in all. What I am trying to say is, Put simply, when all is said and done, the point is, to sum up, what it boils down to is, that is 15 magical phrases. If you just learn these 15 phrases, your English listening will transform. You will go from feeling stressed and lost to feeling calm and in control. You will start to enjoy watching movies without subtitles. You will start to enjoy chatting with strangers. You will start to feel like a truly fluent person. Because fluency is not about knowing every word in the dictionary. Fluency is about knowing how to navigate a conversation smoothly. Now it is time for our final, ultimate listening practice. This one is a bit longer, and it brings together characters and situations from all the things we have talked about today. I want you to treat this like a meditation. Close your eyes if you can. Take a very deep breath in and let it out slowly. Let go of any stress you have. Tell your brain that it does not need to work hard right now. It just needs to sit back and wait for the signs. Here is the story. A family is sitting around the dinner table. The father, Arthur, is telling his wife Sarah and his two kids, Lucas and Mia, about his plan to build a treehouse in the backyard. Arthur explains that he went to the hardware store and looked at different types of wood. He talked to 3 different workers about which wood is best for outside weather. He compared the prices of pine wood and oak wood. He drove to another store to look at nails and screws, but they were out of stock, so he had to order them online. He watched 5 hours of internet videos about how to build a roof that will not leak when it rains. Lucas and Mia look incredibly bored. Sarah looks a little worried about the cost. Arthur sees their faces, stops talking, and says, "Okay, to sum up, I am going to start building it next weekend." Sarah asks how much it will cost. Arthur thinks about the wood and the screws and the tools, and he says, "Well, what it boils down to is it will cost about $300. Sarah sighs and says, "That is a lot of money for a treehouse." Lucas says he does not even want a treehouse. He wants a video game. Mia says she is scared of heights and will not go in it anyway. Arthur feels a little sad. He realizes he spent 3 weeks planning this for nothing. He looks at his family and says, "What I am trying to say is, I just wanted us to have a fun project together." Sarah smiles and touches his hand. She says, basically, we appreciate the thought. Lucas says, the main takeaway here is that Dad is a good guy, but he is bad at planning. Everyone laughs. Arthur laughs too and says, "Yeah, when all is said and done, I think we will just buy a tent." Sarah says that is a great idea. Lucas says, "Put simply, let's go camping." Mia smiles and says, "The point is, we just want to spend time with you, Dad." Arthur feels so much better. He says, all in all, this was a very useful dinner conversation. And at the end of the day, that is what family is for. How beautiful was that? You just sat through a complicated family drama about wood, screws, and tree houses, and you understood every single emotion. You understood Arthur's excitement, his realization that it was too expensive, his sadness, and his final happiness. You understood Sarah's worry and her love. You understood the kids being bored and then being sweet. And you did it without translating a single word. You did it by floating on the river of their conversation and grabbing the gems when they appeared. You listened for to sum up. You listened for what it boils down to. You listened for what I am trying to say. Basically, the main takeaway, when all is said and done, put simply, the point is, all in all, and at the end of the day. You caught every single one. If you can do that in a practice audio, You can do it in a real coffee shop. You can do it in a real business meeting. You can do it on a real date. You have the power now. As we finish this lesson, I want you to remember one very important thing. The biggest enemy of English listening is fear. When you are afraid of making a mistake, your brain closes down. You stop hearing the music of the language. You start fighting the language. But when you relax, when you accept that you will not understand every word, your brain opens up. You start to play with the language. You start to enjoy the language. These summarizing phrases are your shield against fear. They tell you that it is okay to miss the details. They tell you that the speaker is going to make it easy for you at the end. Trust the speaker. Trust the process. And most importantly, trust yourself. You know more English than you think you do. You are smarter than you give yourself credit for. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending this time with English in Fluency. Making these lessons for you is my passion. I know how hard it is to learn a new language. I know the frustration, the embarrassment, and the exhaustion. But I also know the joy of having a real conversation in a new language. It feels like magic, and you are so close to feeling that magic all the time. If you found value in this lesson, please do me a huge favor and share this video with a friend who is also learning English. Tell them to stop translating every word. Tell them about the summarizing superpower. Hit the like button so the internet knows this lesson helped people. Make sure you are subscribed to English in Fluency with notifications turned on, because we have so much more to come. We are going to help you master speaking, we are going to help you master vocabulary, and we are going to make it fun. Leave a comment right now and tell me which of the 15 phrases was your favorite, or just tell me how you are feeling today. I read every single comment, and I am cheering for you. You are doing an incredible job. Keep relaxing, keep listening, and keep smiling. I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.